I think that honestly, just to open this up, I really think arrangement is probably one of the most important things a producer can really get good at. It's kind of the cure to writer's block and getting out of loopitis and all that kind of stuff. I really think that most producers don't really catch flack or have resistance from their sound design ability or their ideas. It's turning the bar into a song and keeping it interesting. And it's just hard to kind of determine what should happen next. I found it's pretty easy from the outside perspective to offer advice in that situation. And some of what really helps me in this kind of realm is pretending that I'm mentoring myself. It's kind of like a trip to think about, but eventually you're going to notice that in your production creative career, you're getting into where acting and tricking yourself into doing things is a skill that you really kind of want to cultivate and motivating yourself in strange ways. But arrangement is really kind of the key. And I think it's the part of most people's kind of sessions that really messes them up the most. Cause I think we've all been there when inspiration strikes and we're feeling it and the ideas are coming out and then suddenly they're not. And it's kind of like, oh, the tide went out or something and we're stuck. I'm like, I'm sure y'all have huge folders of unfinished songs, loops. Honestly, I probably have 1,000 of them on this computer. This one goes back to when I think I got this in 2020. So I got a solid 5 years of unfinished ideas on here, and it's definitely over 1,000. And so I think that my arrangement skills and really using arrangement to kind of propel my production forward is a huge piece of that. So what is arrangement? It's basically the order in which things happen. And obviously that's it. But I use a great analogy here. I'm sure y'all probably have heard me talk about this, but have you heard the IKEA analogy? Have I talked to you
And
about this a little?
I know how IKEA walks you through their stores.
Yeah, exactly. And that's pretty much what you want to do with your arrangement.
Right.
And they do an excellent job of everyone goes one way through the store.
Right.
And they do a great job of kind of jumping in with a splash. They'll show a really cool kind of, set up room or something. And then around that area, they have a lot of smaller things to go through. But they roll it out kind of one at a time. So, you walk up and it's like living room stuff. And they show you a living room. And then they're like, all right, here's the couches. And then here's the chairs and the chaise lounges and all that kind of stuff. And then they're like, all right, well, let's move into kitchen stuff. And they show you some pre-set up kitchens. And then they individually have sinks and cabinets and all this kind of stuff. And within that, they have smaller, little tiny things like spatulas and stuff kind of spread out everywhere. So you never really get bored in IKEA. It's like when I always think about when you ride down one of those Christmas light streets in your neighborhood, and it's just like at the right mile an hour, you can just see everything and take it in, and
Right.
it's like a movie basically. So keeping that IKEA arrangement, it's really important to kind of introduce the elements of your song in a palatable sequence for people to just analyze and understand. And some of the pitfalls you can fall into is having too long of a section without change or having too many elements introduced at once. Those are kind of like the two main pits you can fall in when it comes to arrangement. And it's all about kind of the setup. It's like storytelling. It's like comedy, honestly. If you guys are into comedy at all, it's like setting up the joke, the punchline, the timing, callbacks, all that kind of stuff is directly kind of related to arrangements, at least good ones. And after a while of analyzing and referencing arrangements, you're like, oh, everything's kind of the same. But within that, it's like, what do you do to set your idea up to win the best? Typically, the hard thing about arrangement is seeing your song from that 30,000-foot view where you're seeing it from a listener's perspective, you're seeing it from the outside and kind of looking at it a little more obtusely and to be like, what do I want out of this section? And how am I going to provide contrast with the next section? Because that's really what arrangement is all about. It's about controlling energy, kind of building tension and releasing the tension. And a lot of that is done via contrast. So kind of identifying what sections of your song need to do what their job is. I feel like when you're in the mud, when you're in the thick of it, sometimes that floats away and you're just kind of lost in the puzzle that is arrangement where you have some pieces and you don't even really know what the picture is, but you're just kind of piecing things together to kind of build this arrangement. But I think sometimes we forget about what is this section's job?
Right.
What do I need to do in the next section to contrast that, to make that switch up kind of uppercut sucker punch feeling? Because obviously in electronic music that is just the most powerful kind of arrangement, is the switch up kind of thing.
I think I struggle with that a lot. Not to cut you off, but
No, no,
I
absolutely,
get
go
I
for
get
it.
hit back by a lot of playlists, and people have told me where my songs are great. They just don't have those necessarily exciting moments. And I feel like that's where I'm really good at this cohesive, progressive movement and
Mhm.
very clean, almost just needing vocals type. But sometimes I'm missing that. You said the sucker punch. That's
Like,
something that people go like, "Oh shit, that was tight."
and typically I always kind of write the drop first. I'm always like the punch I've written, and the hard part is setting up the anticipation for that. And you'll notice a lot of times if your kind of build up anticipation section has a lot of similar elements to the actual drop, it just doesn't land.
Right.
Think about it like a poker game or something. You've kind of shown all your cards already, and you need to save a little bit of uniqueness, and you need to save something new for the listener to analyze, a big piece for there. You need to have a section of your IKEA that is really kind of breathtaking. And then that's kind of the main section. And so that really leads you to be like, okay, what is each section actually for? And I saw a great interview with this drum and bass producer, Current Value. He's like insane, noisier kind of level sound design. I watched some of his tutorials and he's synthesizing all his drums and
Yeah.
doing insane stuff, but he's a half German, half English guy. So he's got the culture
Probably
from
also 6'4".
maybe he's got the culture from the English and the German engineering brain,
That's so sick.
and so he's like, your intro is really like, think about it from a functional standpoint. Its
Yeah.
job is to introduce kind of the tempo, kind of the meter. Is this a halftime song? Is this a full-time song? How are the drums kind of going to go? And it's to introduce kind of the key or the vibe so that a DJ can kind of tell through the intro, is this song going to work with the song I'm currently playing? Or so those are our real jobs in the intro. And obviously, as we talked earlier, is to provide contrast with your other sections as well. So a lot of times my intro will be elements of my main section with the main element kind of removed. It's kind of like this shadow of everything else without the really strong part so that I can tease that maybe through the build up and have the actual reveal be a little bit more breathtaking because we haven't heard the main part of the song yet. And then when I get to my build up, my whole job is to provide contrast, kind of a bridge. If we get a more traditional songwriting kind of arrangements, I'm really talking electronic music here more than Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter or something. But that is the function of a bridge, is to kind of go away so it feels good to come back home. And I think that buildups are kind of the same job, is to provide a different place that's not the drop and to do a lot of things that are the inverse of the drop so that when we do land on the drop, it feels good and satisfying. And so
Yeah.
typically drops are like stripped back a little bit. They're bassy. They're kind of a little more mono focused sometimes at the beginning. We can obviously get to super wide and stuff like that. So, what are the inverse of those things? And that's really what I want to achieve in my buildup. Is I want things to be crazy and chaotic, and I want them to be dissonant and wide, and I want it to be high indie as far as, and I typically, it's something I break this rule a little bit, but I kind of want to remove the bass from my buildup a lot of the times. Not that I don't want any low frequencies, but
Yeah.
I want
Just
to
cut it close.
leave some room so that when I do land, it feels good. And
Yeah.
I don't want to show all my cards. So I might, this is the hard part. And honestly, middle sections and buildups and are kind of where I spend the majority of the hours in my productions. Typically, the drops and the main sections come pretty quickly for me, 1, 2 hours normally, but the buildup and the middle section are like the coffee work is kind of what I call it. It's kind of drudgery for me or drudgery for me, and it takes a lot of effort and focus, but that makes your drop land so much harder when you have the right setup for your joke. One of my favorite comedians, Norm Macdonald, he is famous for stretching that setup out as long as possible. There's a famous joke on he goes on Conan and tells the moth joke, which is I think it's over 15 minutes long, and it's a terrible punchline. And it's like a moth walks into a barber shop and he starts complaining to the barber about his family and his son is a loser and his daughter's doing this and his wife and his work. And he complains on and on and on and on and on. And eventually the barber says, "It sounds like you need a psychologist, not a barber. Why'd you come in here?" And the moth goes, "Your light was on," because he's a moth. And it's like 15 minutes for that, but it's the funniest thing ever, and it's almost like it's a whack punchline, but the buildup is so important. And for the techno and house heads out there, a nice solid 3-minute tension-filled, energetic buildup slays the club. People go nuts. There's this one Wongo song I used to play a lot that has a solid 3-minute buildup in the middle, and people would cheer. The club would audibly kind of go off when I played that a lot of the time.
That's
Um,
sick.
eh yeah, absolutely, and I would play it a lot because people it really works. But how do I make a 3-minute build up that works? And it's really about painstakingly listening over and over and over and using certain indicators to push you forward. Now, something I wanna talk about here is a lot of people, I don't know, I saw it at different schools I taught at, kind of taught people to make the song and then arrange it, and I think that a lot of times those things are happening at the same time. And a lot of times, once I get into my arrangement and I'm making this puzzle out of pieces I've created, and I don't really know what it looks at, there's 2 points here. It's good to have too many pieces because that helps you when you get to arrange and you're like, I gotta do something here. And there's 2 things you can do there is use something you haven't used before from your kind of earlier production, where you have just kind of extra stuff that's maybe turned off, or to create something new. And so the point here is when I'm creating the loop, a lot of times I'll create options for myself within the production where maybe every channel turned on together doesn't sound so great, but they all kind of work in different pairings, and that kind of allows me to have different sections of my arrangement, or really just things to try as I'm feeling out my arrangement. And the other thing is, like, don't be scared to produce while you're arranging. Sometimes you don't know what your song needs until you're arranging it, and you come across a thing where you're like, "Ah, I need to make something for this section to achieve what I'm after, either energy-wise or setup-wise." Typically, I have a little bit of idea of what I want the buildup to be, but I'm spending hours in those sessions kind of meticulously automating 16th note snare drum rolls, synthesizing buildup sounds like 16 bar pitch envelope, serum sounds, pulling stuff off of Splice, kind of smashing it together, taking my vocal and making tiny loops out of it and filtering it in over a long period and doing multiple automations. Other things that work really well, teasing your main bass sound, having it fall in from a high pass with a bunch of reverb on it, where people hear this shadow of your main sound, but it develops over time. And then you're able to kind of push all those things in crescendo together to get to our drop. And I'm sure a lot of y'all have noticed that building up directly into the drop also can cause a little bit of a loss of energy. Sometimes that gap, just a 4 count or something before can make all the difference. For me, what really cemented it was the Steve Aoki Bloody Beetroot song from 20 years ago or whatever, Warp, and it's got the right before the drop. That is so powerful. It works so well. It's also a great thing for DJs to just snap out of the mix and kind of cut to a soloed sound for just a couple counts. It really aids in mixing a lot. So, but the thing is, I bet they didn't know or didn't have the whoop whoop until the very end of producing that song. It's probably like, oh, we just need to put something in here. We need this gap. We need to put something in there. And that kind of leads me into another point I make is if I'm listening through and I'm like, oh, this section is it's a little long in the tooth. We're getting a little bored here. We gotta do something. Sometimes I'll go ahead and kind of cut the hole into my song that where I want something to happen before I've made that thing. And it's kind of like an intention thing where I'm cutting that little gap right before the middle of my drop so that I can elevate a little bit up into sixth gear. It will allow me to start dragging things from my production in there to see what kind of sounds good in that spotlighted moment, or it'll kind of push me to go find something that does fit that energy. And so much of what I'm doing is it's like a block of clay or a sculpture, and I'm getting the general shape of it going, but the whole thing is fluid and it changes as I'm going. And sometimes once I start arranging, I'm like, oh, drop two is drop one. That's something I give that feedback every week to mentees, and it's hard to tell when you're in the kitchen making the sauce. It's like
Yeah.
that great Dr. Fresh analogy from the interview with Max where he talks about the spaghetti sauce. And it's like when you're making the spaghetti sauce all day, you get a little lost in the sauce. And when your roommate comes home from work and you're like, "Yo, try this." They have a better
Yeah, it's
uh,
fresh.
they have a better they can be like, "Oh, I need salt." And it's sometimes it's hard for you to tell that because you've just been smelling the ingredients all day and kind of involved in it. Another thing is you can just put some time between yourself and the production.
Yeah,
Um,
that helps.
yeah, totally. It just helps you have a fresh take on it. That's probably the best thing I could offer as advice is make a bunch of underdeveloped demos all month and then just listen back and kind of pick the good ones. It's like that really kind of changed things for me when
Can
I
I
kind
ask
of
you a question
yeah,
about one of the
absolutely.
points you made?
Yeah.
You said the second that, I mean, and I feel this because even my wife had mentioned it once, and I was like, she's probably right. The second drop, I tend to, again, build over time. And I feel like the second drop sometimes should probably be the first drop
Yeah.
because it's just more, I mean, it's more energetic and it's just like,
Lead with the best foot forward.
yeah, I feel like I'm going to lose. I mean, in this 2 second attention span age, I'm going to lose a lot of people if the first drop doesn't hit
Yeah.
the way it should.
And typically your second drop or your second section, a bit more of a roller kind of feel to it, where things might elongate and release a little bit and be
Yeah.
a kind of heavier version of what's happening. Where I'm going a lot of times for ride cymbals. I'm pulling amplitude release times out.
Yeah.
I'm adding harmonies. I'm filling
Filtering.
it
Yeah.
in. I have a thrash metal brain. I kind of grew up making metal, and so that's when that's when Vinnie Paul goes to the ride cymbal and it all kind of lifts up and I try to think about like what Pantera would do or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so typically the second drop is the inverse where at the beginning of my first drop I want to leave a little bit of room for me to elevate the energy halfway through. Like I want to be able to go from fifth to six. I want to kick it up because a
Yeah.
lot of people blend through the drop. We're still playing the highs of the old song. We need a little room for that to kind of coexist. But the second drop's kind of the inverse, where we want to lead with the absolute highest energy part first, and then just kind of stair step down from there,
Yeah.
kind of like for an arrangement. But yeah, it's arrangement mode is a little bit different brain than from creation mode. And when you're creating ideas, it's sometimes they don't come out in the right order. There's a famous David Lynch quote where he talks about making films, and he says it's like there's a man in another room, like flipping me scene by scene, one at a time. And at first, it just doesn't make any sense. But when I start kind of like piecing them together, like after a minute, I kind of have something, and then it shows me what it needs to be. And the same is with songs, especially. So the hard part is being open to having drop one be drop two,
Right.
and doing kind of big changes like that to see. And like I do it all the time with phrasing and stuff as well. Famously, Enter Sandman.
Yeah.
It's on the demo, the riff tape that Kirk Hammett made. It's it's that riff. So they kind of like took the first half of it, did three, and kind of like edited it and arranged it, and it's so much more powerful. And like that happens to me in almost every song.
Yeah. Yeah.
where it's, I've added too many stops or not enough stops, and I need to like have an open mind for what I've created and kind of continue to mold it into feeling right. And it's really like an energy focus kind of thing where that's my main goal, is to tell the story and provide the energy like in the right level at the right time. So being able to like heavily edit what I do and not have too strong of an idea of what I want it to be like, has led me to like really powerful kind of um epiphanies and
Yep.
realizations and stuff.
Can I ask a minor
Sure.
question about like,
Yeah.
so I tend to work a lot because I do like more progressive stuff, or like it ends up that way in like 8 bars.
Mhm.
And I work within those 8 bar segments to like try to bring something fresh in at least every 4 bars.
Mhm.
Um, is there anything that you do? Cause like I feel like that's part of arranging. I worked in these like
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4
Totally.
wordings and then moving them around and figuring out that sort of thing. Do
Mhm.
you work in like any sort of like 2 bar trying to bring something in new to keep it fresh every so often?
Honestly, it's entirely feel based. And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what I really do is I will listen to the song while I'm not looking at the arrangement. If it's in my car or if I'm walking
That's
or I have the shit off, or like I'll try to get feedback from someone that's not a producer.
yeah.
Like my wife will be like, "I'm bored." And I'm like, "That's like the best feedback ever." You're like, "Okay,
You're like, oh shit.
I gotta switch it up here." Like, like right when they said that, I usually write down the timestamp.
Yeah.
Like if I'm listening to my wife and she's like, "I'm bored," I'll be like 2:14, like
Yeah.
bored, like I need to
Yeah.
do something here. And like
Yeah. Yeah.
then I try to pretend that I'm her when I listen, you know? And like if we go for a certain length, then like, sometimes you can get away with just having something roll for a while if it's that sick.
Yeah.
But I try to get into that mindset and I'm like, okay, something needs to happen here. And what I really do is I use this kind of like duplicate and vary methodology, where if I take enough elements and permute them into different sections and then call and response between them, and then that kind of along with like percussion lenses is kind of what I call them, like a loop, like a ride loop or a tambourine loop that recontextualizes everything, but isn't that big of a change.
Yeah.
Like in house, a lot of times, like the second half of my drop, I'll like pull the tail out of the open hat. And it's like huge change,
Yeah.
very little that I actually do, but
All
the
right.
feeling change is huge. And, if we have like, 4 unique bars and then I add that ride loop on the next one, suddenly we have 8 bars of uniqueness, but it's really the same thing.
All right.
We've just provided a little bit of like a context shift. So if I have enough of those and enough of like sounds that I can call and response and alternate between, same with like downbeat sounds, I'll make a couple and alternate. I can really make 16 bars of uniqueness,
Right.
where no bar is really the same. And that's something I look at too. But like sometimes I break my own rules just because like, oh, I'm like, this feels good. Like I don't
Yeah.
need to do anything. It's more of
Totally.
like a per case thing. And obviously people are gonna have different opinions, but that's the fun part of art,
Yeah.
is like you can kind of be like, I feel compelled to do something here, and so I will.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of like follow my heart a little bit in that situation, but also like, I through, practicing so much, I'm confident that if I have a one bar that works, I can make a full arrangement out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Just by using that duplicate and vary kind of mindset. Like I can just keep pulling it apart and then producing a little bit in that arrangement as well, where I'm like, "Oh, okay, I need something here." And that might influence what I produce.
Right.
The need that the arrangement kind of introduces. And that happens to me so much, where I even realized that, like, when you're starting a song and you're, like, picking drums, like, I used to do this all the time, like, I would start every song by just going through drums in a folder, like, "Psh, oh, I like that one, Psh, take it. Do, 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 do."
Yeah.
And it's like, once you produce the song, you're gonna have a much better idea of what drums are gonna work with it. And it's kind of an arrogant thing to be like, "Oh, I like these drums. They're gonna work with this thing I haven't even created yet." So a lot of times now I'll use like placeholder drums, or like this,
Yeah,
I
for
kind of
sure.
start with the same drums a lot, to be honest. And I'll end up switching it out once I have kind of the rest of the song produced, because the arrangement shows me what I need. And if I have the mindset where I'm like, I can still produce at the 11th hour, I can either find or make what I need. but I need to be open to what the arrangement's showing me, paying attention to the energy and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I just need something here. A lot of times that has led me to kind of like innovate where I'm not sure what I need. I just start trying stuff and like, man, having Splice in the browser now is insane for that. I'll like
Yes.
put my key in and just kind of like see what works. And like, I'll be finding crazy stuff now to just kind of throw in as like a tagline or a turnaround to a section. And a lot of times people are like, that part is so cool. That's my favorite part.
Dude, I don't get the Splice hate. I like have a whole video like drafted and ready to go to post
That
because I'm a Splice user. I have been for almost 10 years. And like
it's
you
it's all
can't
about what you use it for.
right, like don't use the
So
vocal.
yeah.
If you're gonna use the vocal, I'm gonna tell you what pack it's from. I've heard it, but like
Don't use the
sometimes
chord progression, but like,
right.
hey,
I've used it as like a placeholder before, but
yeah.
then get rid of it. Yeah, I don't
Well,
know. But
like,
the
if
drum
you need a
samples
snare drum, it's the best place ever to look because you
or like
can
ambient stuff, I love. I'm just like a chord
absolutely,
progression I can take and tweak. Or not chord, but like a just one drone
yeah. Buildups, just
builds.
layering buildups. Like,
Totally.
I usually find that probably 75% of my tracks are in the buildup or the middle. And it's like my drop's pretty simple, like numerically, like the
Right.
amount of layers involved. And it's like most of the stacking and mixing and all the layering is like the build up. And being like, oh, I just need something, and I can just kind of go through and like everything hits in key and in time. And then I can edit that down to kind of like work better within my arrangement. But it just makes it so much quicker. And we kind of talked, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, about how like speed is kind of like of the essence.
Yeah.
So uh having Splice in there integrated, all that stuff, it just makes the production so much quicker. And I kind of don't hit that moment where I feel like I've fallen off the board and the idea is gone.
Yeah.
Because like that's really what we're chasing, is like we're trying to stay on the wave. Like it's like surfing.
Yeah.
Like you want to stay on it. And when you feel like it's gone, it's kind of hard to get the momentum back. So Splice is such a good tool because I can just pull in kind of like anything, and just try it. And a lot of times I'll leave the stuff in my production, like multiple channels. Like I have a lot of stuff turned off in my production. And it's really just puzzle pieces for me to kind of like pull up later when
Right.
I know I'm gonna hit an impasse where I need something. So I'm like, I just have all these options for me that are already kind of curated. So that helps me a ton. And I'm a session view writer. Like I write in that and I write a loop and I make it way, way, way too busy on purpose so that I just have options when it comes to arrangement time. Same with
Session view is the
basses
best.
and all that shit. Like I over create so that
Yeah.
I just am able to pull in the right piece when I need to. Um,
Session view is the best.
it's amazing.
I
I call
preach
us
it.
the 1%.
Dude,
And
it's
then
like I'm like it's your palette and then you
yeah,
don't have to commit anything to the canvas. It's like
exactly.
you can have as many palettes as you want.
Yeah, and I kind of like I came up working on like samplers and hardware
Right.
and
Yeah.
like no arrangement window. And it reminds me of that where
Yeah.
I can like, if I really have a good loop, I know I can have a good arrangement. And
For sure.
it's having that confidence off the session view loop, like confidence is key when it comes to arrangement. Like if you know you can get it done, you'll get it done.
Yeah,
But if you're
definitely.
unsure of yourself, like that can really mess you up. So yeah, absolutely. Splice is so good because it just kind of keeps the momentum going.
Yeah.
You can just grab little pieces and all that kind of stuff. Like
I
I
also love looking for
absolutely
stuff.
love it.
Like I'm a
Yeah,
big sample, like you're just sample crate diving in
totally.
digital form.
And I'll take a melody and convert it to MIDI
Yep.
and
Same.
use my own leads and stuff like that. But just like anything to like spark some inspiration, just get a
Yep.
little bit of an idea going. And then just kind of riding that out is kind of key.
Yep.
So let's talk about some pitfalls a little bit. Like typically problems that we have are too long without a change, kind of how we talked about earlier. If your ego is really getting in your way, that can really cause you problems as far as like not identifying that it's been rolling for too long. And it's like you don't want to be too self-critical. You don't want too many changes too quickly, but that's where I'm talking about like the acting is kind of important. If you can put yourself into the mindset of someone that didn't make this song, it helps you so much be able to kind of tell what's up with the arrangement. So, too long without any ideas or too many ideas at once. This is something I see a lot of new producers do is they'll just have, at their drop, there's 7 new sounds that come in. And like it's not like they don't work, it's not like they don't fit together. It's just too much for me to analyze at once. And that always brings me back to the IKEA arrangement thing where it's like, if you stair step those out and kind of like every 4 bars introduce one of those new layers, it leads someone through your song more than just being like, yeah, here's a bunch of like, here's the punchline right at the beginning. So that's another thing we can fall into. I think the other thing is like having too many elements from your drop in your buildup. Our buildup is all about creating contrast, and if we show too many of those cards, and if we have don't have unique elements for our other sections, that contrast and juxtaposition just does not work as well. Um, so that's sometimes that is really the crux of if this loop is going to turn into a song or not, is like, do I have another section? And I don't really think that like an idea is an idea until I kind of have 3 sections. And if I have 3 things that talk to each other and work and sound good together, but also provide the effect of a bridge where I can go away from home so that it feels good to come back and kind of return to what's happening, then I'm like, all right, I can do this. I can do this. And then the other thing is just having your sections in the wrong order. Like that kind of like drop one should be drop two kind of thing, like having your energy dispersal be correct and feel right. Uh, Another thing that you can really run into is just overworking it and not committing to any of these things and kind of like getting lost in the weeds where it's like that big picture view of the song is really the most important. And I think it's pretty important that we rush to the end of the arrangement so that we can then go back and do detail work. So a lot of times, like if I'm working, like I mentioned this last week, um, if I'm working, I'm sprinting towards the end. And my goal of a production session is playable arrangement. And I try to get that in the same day as I generate the idea because it's hard to get back into the mindset and emotions and feelings that you're feeling on a previous day. Um, I find it really hard to dive back into a project from last month and finish it if I haven't gotten an arrangement out. It's really easy to go into the song from last month and change the snare and change the kick and mix. But like generating elements of the song that are important, like writing, it's really hard. Songs are kind of like photographs of a feeling or a day or something like that. And getting back into that mindset is difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. So I generally, when I'm feeling inspired and I'm writing, I try to get to a 2 drop outro written arrangement as quick as possible. And then once that's there, I'm like, okay, like I made it to the finish line and now I can refine. And I find that that is much
Totally.
easier to kind of split that up into 2 sections. And like, then I can kind of look at it from the outside. I can listen to it in the car, and write notes in my phone at timestamps as far as what needs to happen. And there's generally always something that pops in my mind when I listen to something I'm working on, not at my DAW looking at the arrangement window. My brain just works differently. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's I anticipate the cursor hitting the block and like I know what that block is, and my brain almost like puts it in the song before it's even there. So like really listening to it from a listener's perspective is huge, and whatever you can do to get your mind to think that way. I know some people can just look at the arrangement window and just, it still hits them as though they're listening in another way. And I know some people are a slave to the arrangement window and they just stare and listen over and over with the feet on the desk all day, every day. And that is dangerous as well because that can, form neural pathways in your brain that you don't want to change. If you wake up every morning and drink 6 beers, it sure is hard to stop doing it. So listening to the same song over and over and over in an uncompleted state can cause as many problems as it does good things. I'm constantly remembering that my time working with this song is limited and I want to be moving forward while I'm working on it. Because after a certain hour mark, I've hit that overworked kind of quota, and then I'll never finish it. Um, so yeah, that's another important thing to not fall into. There's a lot of pitfalls for the old arrangement, to be honest. There's 2 hobbies, man. That's crazy. Um, so yeah, something that I really taught myself is like giving myself that like I must get an arrangement for this before the clock strikes midnight and I turn into a pumpkin. That's like that's really the goal is to like get to an arrangement. And that really like when my skills got to the point where that was possible, that changed things for me a lot. As soon as the idea is there and I kind of see the pieces, I'm like, well, let's just go ahead and arrange it, even if I don't have the song fully produced, because as I arrange, it's gonna tell me what it needs. If that makes
Okay.
sense. You got a question, John, or anything, man? I've just been
No,
steamrolling.
no,
Shannon will pop in.
I'm really feeling it. A lot of the stuff that you're bringing up are small little things. I'm I'm gonna say like, oh, that's cool that you mentioned that because that's kind of like I've noticed that myself in the way that I'm making things is that like the way that like like this most recent one that I've been working on. It's 16 bars of the same thing. The first eight are there's a lot of the stuff in the first eight that are in the second eight that
Hmm.
and the way that it builds is very
Hmm.
similar and cut back halfway and then rebuild again the second half, but also layering on top of that for the second half. I
Totally.
think it's absolutely stunning right now. I know I need a little bit more noise to it. I know there's still some work to be had, but I like it.
Hmm.
I like the way that feeling feels really good, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's like that is a tried and true arrangement that from death metal into dubstep, people kind of do over and over and over. And there are some kind of like reusable lessons we learn from arrangement. And honestly, when analyzing, you'll realize a lot of things are very similar. But it's like what we do within that, and like, we know a change needs to happen here, but like what change is that gonna be? And typically I find that like I need to change a little thing in each group. So, halfway through, if I have a 32 bar drop and I kind of have an elevation section in the second half where everything skips up, I'll have that ride loop come in that I kind of always talk about. But I really want to do something in the basses too. And I kind of want to do something with the kick and snare too. And maybe the vocal as well. And these are like four little changes that together feel like a pretty predominant change, but it's 95% of what we had before.
Yep.
It's mostly the same motif.
Our indie
Um,
producers gonna absolutely love it.
yeah, it's adding some embellishment and intricacies for the listener to analyze, but also being like, here's more of what you wanted,
Yep.
and so that really works the best. And like I typically steer away from like exact bar counts as far as like, oh, I need to have a middle section that's 32 bars. A lot of times if I make like a sick build up, um, and it's just I have a lot of stuff going on and it just feels like it's dragging, I will truncate each section and make it a 16 bar middle section. Where I'll take each sub 4 and cut it in half, and then I still have all my different sections of the build up, but we're just getting to the point a little bit quicker. And I'll do the opposite if I feel like I could stretch it out more and create more tension based on the puzzle pieces that I have.
What's
Um,
your
you
what's your primary style whenever you're producing?
like genre wise,
Yeah.
right now, man, I don't even know anymore. I've been at it for too long, but my last project was kind of like a bass house thing. um like night bass records like AC Slater, that kind of stuff. But man, I grew up playing jazz in school. I played in death metal and thrash metal bands, then I played in indie rock bands, then I made electro house, then I made trap and dubstep. I've really been all over the map, but arrangements very similar. Like obviously certain styles have like unique kind of arrangement things, but once you learn the two or three possible different variations of that arrangement for that genre, you kind of know them all. And typically in electronic music, another thing I wanted to say is like this is somewhere you don't want to innovate, especially if you want DJs to play your music. Fitting in with your arrangement is kind of good because like most music that's DJ music kind of has a similar arrangement, and it just adds to the playability. But that being said, if you go pull up the number one song on Beatport right now and steal the arrangement, no one will ever know because your parts are all different.
Of course,
You
yeah, it's
know,
just the
yeah, you're just like referencing like, when their crash happens, my crash happens. And like that's how I learned to arrange back in the day. It's just dragging in my favorites and meticulously copying kind of what happens. And then you start to realize like, oh, they're all the same.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, it's the same thing over and over. And it's interesting that music has like a an arrangement or like a thing that humans generally have a consensus about where they're like, yeah, this feels the best. You know, and a lot of times, like when I would have a classroom full of kids and we'd be giving feedback on someone's song, most people agree. There's generally like a way things should be, you know, and that a lot of times that is the struggle with the arrangement. You're like, it just doesn't feel right, you know, because there's like a way it should be that we haven't quite hit on, and so like really locking into that and making it feel good, um, is a hard thing to think about when you're like in the pieces, you know. Um, but you know, each song that you make, each song that you arrange successfully, is like a notch in the belt. Like you're getting stronger, and you have experiences that you can kind of relate to, because you've you know you've created problem
oh,
solving
definitely
skills.
for me. It's pretty funny. You can if you go on my sound, you can literally like if you listen to the first song and listen to them in order, like
Mhm.
you can hear my
Hear you
educational
improve, like yeah,
improvement in
dude.
every fucking song. It's hilarious.
I'd say once a year, I probably listen to everything I've ever made. And I'll just get wasted and go back and listen to songs from 25 years ago and stuff, and, like, I love it.
Yeah,
There's been
and
points in
for
my
reals.
life where it's made me sad, but now it's like, I don't know, man, like, I've got shitty tattoos from 20 years ago, and that's what my songs from 20 years ago kinda are. It's like, it's not like I wanna get them covered, it's like, it reminds me of where I was and what I was
Yeah.
doing and who I was with.
Yeah,
It's like a photo kinda, you know? So, um, I love that, but it kinda shows your trajectory and, like, what's possible and where you can go. Um, it's fun, you know, that kind of, like, chasing the dragon or whatever, like the carrot in front of the horse. That is kind of the vehicle for growing as an artist, and you're never gonna lose that. And like when you feel like, oh, I've learned everything, and like I know I really know what's going on, and I'm good now. It's like that's when you stop growing.
yeah.
You know, like I've my whole life felt like I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and like there was a problem to solve, you know, like there's an issue with every song. And nowadays, when I really have a big production problem, I get a smile on my face. Like I'm excited. Like I know I'm gonna learn something new to get through this. It's not gonna stop me because I'm unstoppable. You know, but like it's you get to make a new tool to put into your tool belt that then, you know, in 3 years when you have a similar problem, you'll be like, oh, I could just do that thing I did back then. Like I've been here. Like I know this castle. I know where the pitfalls are, you know. So it's just you're just gaining
I love
experience.
that mindset. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. They call it beginner's mindset, you know, and it's like amongst the big dogs, it's crazy. You get around people like Skrillex and Kill the Noise and like legendary producers, and you know, you'd think they'd be flexing what they know, but like they're interested in what you're doing because they want to learn and incorporate new things into their production style. One of Skrillex's like assistants one time told me that he's like Rogue from X-Men, like Skrillex. Like he learns things from other producers and then they like become part of his thing forever. Not like a thief, but like he's
No,
really
he
good at
absorbs
like
that shit.
yeah, absorbing it like a sponge, you know? And like you can see it with different people. Like, you know, he was Alvin risked out for a minute, but like I feel like he, you know, moves on and works with Diplo for a while and then like
When you say
becomes a
you can
different
hear
kind of
it in
person.
their music from first to last, from the first to second album.
Yeah,
When I was in,
absolutely.
I was booking their show. The bands they went on tour with on that first album, you could hear like the Academy is
Hmm.
and all these other smaller bands that they went on tour with in the second album that
Yeah,
have some very similar stylings because he's sitting there watching their shows
totally. That's just how music is,
you know
man.
3 months and then the next album
Like
comes out and it's
bro,
nothing
I'm
similar.
old. Remember when Pantera came out and then like, you know,
That's what
Metallica made Sad But True on the next album and it's like, not very thrashy anymore, are we, boys? You know, it's like something big hits and it really has like a moment in the zeitgeist and then it affects everybody, especially people that are easily influenced. And I feel like as creatives, like that's us. Like not in a bad way. It's like, you know, we're sponges that soak up shit and then we kind of relate it in another way and recreate that into our art. So understanding that is a huge piece of being a producer and kind of embracing it. And a lot of times when I'm stuck, I'm like, oh, I just need to learn something, and I'll switch genres or just like take on a new thing I don't know how to do so that I can improve and continue to grow. And a lot of times via the excitement of growing, the ideas come. You get a new VST and you start messing with it, it's like, all right, 5 songs easy. Just like it's like a magic trick. That's why I waited 5 years to get Serum. It's like I was on Operator for so
Did you
long.
just get Serum?
I got Serum 1 5 years late.
Oh, okay.
I got
Okay.
Serum 2 on time, but like I wasn't done with
I mean, it
Operator.
was free.
Yeah, of course. But like, everybody's like Serum, 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 and I'm like, I'm just not done with my shit yet.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
tight.
when I got Serum, and I got a solid 7 or 8 years out of that, until the next thing came along. But
It is a lot. Just
it
kinda
can,
starting with it, you know.
yeah.
I
But
got
it's so
like 3
inspiring.
months into my journey.
The tools are so inspiring.
They
Like
are.
what you can do with the synth really influences what you actually do when you're music.
Yeah,
What's
the
up,
other day
man?
I got
Yo,
a
what's up, guys? I've been here passively. Sorry, I've had a
Lurking.
couple different things going on.
No worries. No worries.
lurking, dude.
Lurking.
Lurking.
He's like in
Shout-
Scooby-Doo, like the painting with just the eyes that move, like watching us. Like,
No, I definitely resonated with a lot of the things that you were just talking about. And like, I mean, I caught myself last night, because I do a lot of referencing and not just like I do auditory referencing, but visual referencing too. I've got mini meters up all the time, and I try and absorb everything that I see my influences doing, whether it's their frequency, like the frequencies that I see present in the EQ or the ones that I don't see present
yeah.
per artist, how big their sound is on the stereo, whatever. But last night I just like really got into that flow state of just like you were saying, like problem solution, and like there's so many different solutions to the same problem, and it's just kind of fun to just like cycle through and be like, all right, which one's going to work the best for this sound,
And that's really the fast lane to becoming your true, authentic, artistic self is like figuring out the answer to the problem on your own and creating your tool set of problem solving skills. It affects the way you sound. Like the way you sidechain, the way you do turnarounds, the way you do fills, all this stuff. It's like that adds the character to where people are like, oh, this is a Matt Keller song. Like I can tell in like 2 seconds. Like but it's a lot. I feel like a lot of people are obsessed with doing the optimal thing. And it's like, there is no optimal thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's whatever feels right to you. And that's like, it's a hard pill for, the finance bro to swallow.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make sense compared to a lot of the other things we learn as, capitalist society people, it's like, it's more feeling based than intellectual based.
Well, I mean, for me, it comes from a deep place of insecurity. I've always been insecure about like my creative stuff. Like that's why I don't release. That's why like everything, like you said, like if I don't finish it in a month, like it's gone. And there's so much of that.
I'd say
like,
that is the large majority of producers. Before frat boys were into electronic music, most of us were really insecure, and it's like kind of a safe place for insecure and different people. And now it's like in the overground and like we get all kinds of different people and stuff. But like, it's hard, man. You don't have a boss. You don't get feedback a lot. And like the negative voices are the loudest. Like, it's just an interesting life, honestly. It's a lot of it's spent by yourself. A lonely thing,
but this school and these people, Shannon, Hobby, John, all the Johns, everyone, Mark, like, like, no, I've made like, so just so you know, PD, I just moved into a condo. I just built the studio around me. I've got my fucking studio monitors in front of me. I got my I got my setup right here.
Hell yeah.
I'm in a comfortable like space physically, but then also mentally with all you guys. And it's been like, I'm super stoked. So like, I'm in a place now where I don't have to worry about like, oh, are my speakers too loud? Is this like, am I staying up too late? And my fucking sister that's like that owns the house that I live in is worried about like what I'm doing, like
you can really listen to yourself and do what you feel compelled to do and not second guess yourself. Like
exactly. And like
that's the flow,
stoked,
bro.
Dude, I'm stoked. I'm so stoked. My dad just ordered me this monitor here has been blown for 3 years and it's a 10-year-old fucking JBL 305. So like I need like the Mark 1. I don't need the Mark 2 or
Mhm.
like whatever,
Yeah.
but my dad found one online, ordered it for me. It's gonna be here in
Sheesh.
3 days. So like I'm
You're
excited, man.
set, man.
I'm
You're set.
excited. But
Well, that's good, man. Yeah, like honestly, like after doing this for 30 years, like the way I'm feeling has a bigger impact on my music than anything.
hmm,
Like my general mood, you know,
yeah,
like if and that's the focus of my life a lot of times is like nowadays is like, let me just be happy so I can make good art.
yeah,
And it's not like I'm really worried about how loud my kick is or my relationship with the side chain. I'm just like, dude, I just need to get in a fire mood so that I can do it. And a lot of it is it's funny, but like it's not technical knowledge or anything like that. It's just, understanding what makes you feel inspired and chasing that instead of the technical knowledge or anything. It's like a big turning point in your career when you kind of get there. So
yeah, yeah. Technical, like I feel like the only technical knowledge that you need to know is just the basics of like,
yeah,
like if you want like a big banger of a song, then you need to know how to generate subharmonics and,
yeah,
for whatever your genre is. Like that could be for house music, for, and so on and so forth. But what you do to create that and what you do with it in your song is totally up to you. So,
absolutely. And it's
once you,
like so much of your career up until that point, you're concerned with fitting in and doing what's right. And then you're like, oh, I need to stand out.
yeah,
I need to be different. I need to listen to myself. I need to do things that break the rules and all that kind of stuff. And it's a crazy kind of like life, because you're having to pivot between different mindsets and
yeah.
turn the page at certain points and be open to change, which can be difficult. But unfortunately, guys, I have another session in 60 seconds. So I have to get out of here. It's been
We
so nice
appreciate you.
talking to
Thanks,
y'all.
Speedy.
So
And
much,
I'll
Speedy.
I'll see you next week or whatever.
Later,
Peace
y'all.
out.